In this interview, I dive in deep on morning routines, getting ourselves on our own priority lists, nutrition, and fresh produce. And there are gifts in this realm in every season. And let's see, moving in different planes. And I'm wondering, have you spent a lot of time on the floor lately? So stick with Jason from Your Epic and me to the end of the episode because we cover an important aspect of health goal setting that I haven't spoken about yet. Welcome to the Wellness While Walking podcast. I'm your walking guide and health coach, Carolyn Cohen. Whether you've been walking or otherwise moving regularly, or it's fallen off your schedule, I'll be here to help you make your own wellness a priority. We'll plan for about a 30-minute walk each week, and while you're ambling, I'll be rambling in your ear. We will talk about walking a bit, but also about wellness in the largest sense of the word, so that we can continue on a journey of a beautiful life of no regrets. Let's chat, learn, laugh, and move in the most natural way possible, and then get back to designing and living the best, most rewarding lives we each ever imagined. Hi, welcome to episode 84. Thanks so much for being here with me today. Before we continue, a reminder that I'm not a doctor or mental health professional, and the content presented here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please make sure you check with your doctor before making any health or lifestyle changes. Hey there, friends. Speaking of friends, we're back with part 2 of my conversation with friend and colleague Jason Dowse of Your Epic. I'll talk more about his work in the world and what it consists of at the end of the episode. Right off the bat today, I wanted to mention that I misspoke something in today's half of the conversation, which we began last episode in episode 83. So in today's half of the chat, though, I said at one point that walking can be a, quote, great place to start. Well, if you've listened from the beginning of the show, you know that this really runs right up against a pillar on which the show was founded. I started the show because of this, which is I'm never going to try to upsell you on working out harder, and I mean that in air quotes. So movement of any and every kind is so important. Can we get different benefits from different kinds of movement? Absolutely. But will I try to get you to abandon walking to start running with the goal of running a competitive race? Nope. Will I encourage you to add more vegetables into your diet as a first step to eating a perfect diet, whatever that possibly could mean? Nope. This show is about embracing the things that many people might consider small actions and understanding that if we stick to these, we're likely to see benefits, often great ones. So walking isn't just a great place to start. It's a great place to stay. So I really wanted to clarify that. And so with that, mea culpa, I really loved dipping back into some topics that we've covered with some new twists. If this episode is longer than your walk or the amount of time that you have today, don't miss the last bit. Maybe come back to it because we cover an evidence-based trick to make behavior change easier and more likely to stick. So definitely listen to the last drop. Okay, here we go.
Let's touch on morning routines. What's your morning routine like? Do you have one? And what are some of your top tips for people who feel like they don't have any time to do anything in the morning and they're just kind of rushing out the door?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am on the tail end of raising 4 kids, and I really felt like my mornings often weren't my own to design, but I sort of took a more lax approach and just didn't attach myself to the exact time I was going to do something. And my days vary because there are times I take a class I love. I have a dance class that I take twice a week, and that really is the kickoff to my day those 2 days, but that's not true of the other days. So I've been more flexible in terms of first of all, how many hours I think of my morning routine as spanning, and then just getting those things in that I'm finding helpful or important for that period of time in my life whenever I can. So sometimes it would be, I would get up early and get, a little time in alone before the kids got up, and we started getting the process going of breakfast and off to school and that kind of thing, and then resuming my focus on those things later. And it definitely varies by season for sure. I mean, most of the time I start my day with a hot beverage that I savor intentionally. That to me is alone time and reflection. Even in the summer, I like it. I like a hot beverage, and I do try to consume it outside and savor it. So in the winter, that means I'm in the Northeast, so getting, really kind of suited up in warm weather clothing. But I do find that going outside first thing, even if it's for a short period of time, is really important. I have a small dog, and there's a lot of wildlife here, so we don't let him out. We take him out. And so that's usually me. So it is a great way to make sure that I step outside at least a little bit in most kinds of weather. So that's really almost, I would say it's a non-negotiable. In terms of other things, I have moved in and out of, different types of journaling. I usually do some sort of reflection. Sometimes the walking happens first thing, sometimes reading. So I think it's just, for me, it's a little bit more malleable, but I love problem solving mornings with clients because getting the morning right is really, it's really, really important. I think that there's also an importance to the other bookend of the evening routine. But I think that making sure that we carve out a little space for ourselves in the morning before the barrage of things that are not necessarily proactive and more reactive, before those things start piling up, that we have created a little time and space in whatever, way that's energizing or replenishing that we need is really, really important.
Yeah, no, and that's so important. That's something we continue to say over and over again, right? Is allow that time for yourself first thing in the day, right? Think of that as your time to power yourself up, wake yourself up, so to speak, right? It may not be, if you imagine like a battery charge, or maybe you wake up and you're at 60%, but if you give yourself 20, 30 minutes to do the things you like, maybe you can get it up to 85 or 90%, right? I think one of the biggest things that changes the course of people's day is we open up that portable information device that we have on us all the time, right? So you may even be laying in bed, and this is something I did for quite a long time. I'd wake up, roll over, see what time it is. Next thing I know, I'm opening emails, looking at text messages, and I've got lions and tigers and bears coming at me before I've even got out of bed, so to speak, right? And that activates that same stress response. So before you've had any time to power yourself up and get yourself ready for the day, you're kind of putting out fires and having to react to things you may have missed in the evening, right? So it's so valuable to allow yourself that time to just take care of yourself and power yourself up, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. And I think that for many people that I work with, there's a little reluctance to put themselves on their own priority list. And I think when you do that first thing in the morning, it sends a signal to yourself that you matter and that your care matters. And I find that reverberates throughout the day. So taking time to do something for yourself in the morning is I find super powerful. And that's one of the most fun things I find working with clients, is to figure out what they need first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it's truly transformative and extremely powerful. Karen, let's look at nutrition. Obviously, nutrition is a polarizing topic now, like most things, right? You can find people arguing over mundane details for any aspect of nutrition now, it seems.
Yep.
What's your nutrition like currently? I know you touched on some health issues that you had earlier and kind of how you transformed that, but where are you at now? And what are some of your top tips for people in terms of navigating that nutritional change, right? They may know they need to make a change, but that's a very tough one for a lot of people to do.
It is. And oftentimes I do find that it might be easier to start elsewhere because, like I shared my story, a lot of times food and nutrition is so fraught for people. And I believe in the power of making really good small decisions throughout the day. I'm not talking about, buying a car, like just little things like, oh, should I, I'm out, should I grab a lunch out, or should I go home and make that salad that I had planned on making, or what have you. So I think those little decisions that we make throughout the day really add up to the quality of our lives. And so oftentimes, if we're not coming from a place of being dialed in on stress management, or being well rested, oftentimes those are harder to make. So often, it leads to us maybe starting elsewhere than directly with food. For myself, I have been doing some experimenting lately after a long time of sort of being in the low carb arena. I actually had very much of a surprising a pre-diabetes diagnosis several years back. This was after having 4 pregnancies with no gestational diabetes. Nobody in my family has diabetes. It was really quite of a shocker, which happened at the allergist's office. Just this allergist who had been in practice for a very long time was seeing that so many people had blood sugar regulation issues that were not getting caught by their annual physical, which I get now as a health coach, because it's really hard to get doctors oftentimes to order anything other than, the one moment in time fasting glucose measure.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. So I had this surprise diabetes diagnosis. I was not overweight. I was, moving my body regularly and so on. I was eating a lot of carbs because at that point in time I was a vegetarian. After I got that diagnosis, I realized for myself that I really needed to add it back in animal protein and really focus on protein because it was so easy for me to forego protein. So I have been sort of in the low carb arena for over a decade at this point, I would say. But I did wear a continuous glucose monitor a few weeks ago. And it's so fascinating because I'm dialed into my energy levels and being curious about what makes, me tired and what helps energize me and keep me focused, and being able to do those blocks of deep work that I want to be able to do and be really mindful and able to do whatever my kids want to do. If they want to suddenly, run off and play pickleball, I'd like to join them and not be exhausted. The CGM helped me pay closer attention to how I was feeling. And I did sort of test it a little bit with some high carb snacks, things I normally wouldn't eat. And it showed me in the data, which is so fun to see, wow, yeah, there's a reason why I'm exhausted and I'm feeling like I need some sort of pick me up in whatever way. So that's been really interesting. I know how to manage it and balance it a bit. But right now, I would say I am just focused on it being summer and really getting in that wide variety of plant food that is so much easier to do here in the Northeast, in the Northern Hemisphere when it is summer. Because having done so much research, and really I love the Hadza tribe, and I think they're so fascinating. We just have an incredible lens to look at, our physiology and how we were meant to be living through them. And, that opportunity is really diminishing when you hear about how the variety of plant food that they eat. I just think the summer is a great time to focus on that. And I think it can be delicious and fun, and it feels self-indulgent. So I really been focusing on adding in as many vegetables as I can. And that just is very positive, and it doesn't feel like onerous, and it feels very much aligned with my environment. I think there's some beauty in that. We bring so much difference to the party. There's not one right way. I do, again, think it's helpful to focus on adding things in rather than taking things away. Right now is such a great chance to do that.
There is, for sure. I like how you broke that down in terms of understanding what you need to modify in terms of your daily specific nutrition for you, the individual who's listening to this. But it comes with awareness, right? It can be a continuous glucose monitor. It can be just understanding, okay, thinking for a minute, like after the last thing you just ate, 30 minutes to an hour after, how do you feel? You feel like you need to take a nap? Do you feel foggy? Do you feel exhausted, right? Like these are things that we've totally lost connection with because we're so go, 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 busy, busy, busy. I'm eating lunch while I'm sending emails and responding to things on my phone that we've totally lost that connection, and we don't even understand what we're eating and how that's impacting us in terms of not just our health, but our energy levels, right?
Yeah.
From day to day. And when we compound that for 365 days a year, like think of what that's doing to your system, your innate, unique system that is your body and your life, right? So that's so important for anyone listening. I think the biggest thing is if you're trying to make any nutritional change is just understanding, like give yourself a moment, think like, how do you feel after you ate that thing, right?
Exactly.
Is it a fast food burger? Is it a fresh cooked piece of meat and a salad with vegetables that you grew from your garden? Like, what is the difference in how those things make you feel while you're eating it and after, right? So try and get back to just that again, that mind body connection of what you're consuming and how it's making your body feel. I think that's a great place to start for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Having that curiosity and just wondering like, oh, how did that do for me? And there were many years I ignored how I felt. I was doing what I I intellectually thought was the right thing. I talk in the podcast about, like, I used to go to lunch at a macrobiotic place and I would have brown rice and veggies. That was my lunch. And then I started the hourly visit to the coffee stand because I was exhausted, but I just didn't value my own feelings. So getting to that place where you start to pay attention is one of the biggest steps that you can take.
Yeah, exactly. We'll always go to those things that are a crutch to help us get through the day, right? Whether it's coffee or energy drinks or soda or pop for certain people or cigarettes, right? These different stimulants that kind of help keep us going, help launch us into the future a little bit to get through that day, right? But if we can think like, why do we need that? Do we need that now? Like what's causing that? It'll get you to a little deeper level. So
absolutely,
that's really important. Obviously, walking is a huge part of your life and your transformation in terms of where you're at today. But what are some other movement exercises in your life currently? And what are some of your top tips for people who, like I touched on earlier, may want to jump into an exercise program, but may not necessarily know where to start? What are some of your top tips for helping people navigate that? Again, another difficult space.
Yes. And I think anything that feels punitive, you shouldn't do. There are people who are motivated by, a huge physical challenge, and that's great. I would think for most of them, the benefits and the feelings of accomplishment outweigh what are the negative feelings. I think that if the negative feelings are outweighing the positives, then we should keep searching for something where we move our bodies and feel great about it. I'm not saying there's no benefit to pushing ourselves, but I really believe in finding what you love. I also believe in potentially finding a range of things, just like the different nutrients that I'm getting from, the beautiful produce that's around. I think there are so many different ways to nourish our body in terms of movement. I love talking about it in terms of movement instead of exercise necessarily. I know you're on Clubhouse a little bit, and I was in a biohacker room, and there was somebody who had done some massive workout the day before, and their device was telling them to rest today. Then it also later sparked them to get up from their desk, and he was sort of confused. He's like, but it told me to rest. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it said don't do a hugely depleting workout, but you still have to move around. That beep indicates we're about halfway through the episode, so if you're not walking a loop, you might want to turn around and head back now. And I think that there is a lot of confusion about that. Many people will have a major workout in some part of their day and then not feel like they need to do anything else. And I think the importance of moving our bodies in different ways and different planes is really undercommunicated. So even for a walk, there are some studies that show that rather than doing a 30-minute walk, just breaking that walk into 3 10-minute stints after meals is super helpful. It manages blood sugar in many people. Moving around is really the thing. And I think there are shortcomings to the blue zones, but I love to look to other places and other people in other stages of their lives for wisdom. And I think that, the people in the blue zones by and large are not doing a major workout in the course of the day. They're moving around doing the stuff of life. They're walking to their place of worship, and they're doing gardening, and they're, maybe fixing something out back, and into old age, they're doing this. I think that that's just a great visual for people. And then I just think knowing that there are different things that movement can provide. Moving in groups in synchrony has been shown to have great mental health benefits. Maybe you can't find a dance class like I do, and that is something I feel very different doing a dance class than in many other workouts that I might try. But I think that even if you can't do that, potentially finding Tai Chi or something else where you're moving with people or walking with people can have some of the same benefits. So I think just having this menu of things, like I said, if some of my kids are home and they're interested in sports more than quote unquote exercise. And so I like to try those things too, and just feeling really good about having moved around. My husband and I did a stretching challenge, and we would do it at night. It did involve looking at it on a screen. So, I was careful in terms of using the features on our screens to make it into more orange and less blue light. But it felt very wonderful to do that stretching routine as a way to slow down and transition to sleep. And so I think it's finding things that you really like to do that kind of satisfy different goals that you might have in terms of connecting with people or being alone or being mindful or sweating or whatever is important to you, and just keep trying to find the things that you love. They can be out there. And I just think it's like I said, with the other podcasts that are in the fitness space, like there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
And I just think it's not resting until you find what works for you. But the value of moving our bodies, we were absolutely designed to move, and walking is a great place to start if people, can't find something else.
It is, yeah. It's a phenomenal place to start, right? And that's why we try and label that category as movement and not just exercise. Because typically when we think exercise, it's okay, what do I have to do in the gym? What exercises do I do? How many sets? How many reps? What do I need to do here? Am I training like a power lifter, a bodybuilder? That has a very common image that a lot of people draw up when they hear exercise, like, oh, I have to go to a gym. But no, we're just talking about organic movement. Like, yeah, if you go to the gym and you train regularly, sure, you should continue to do that. But also, what amount of organic movement are you getting in through the day? Through the last year, gyms have been closed here. I have access to my own private space, which I'm extremely grateful for. I don't know how I would have managed without that. I would have been in a much more difficult position mentally and physically for myself. But one thing I found coming back and spending so much more time doing computer work is like later in the afternoon, I was starting to get like anxious and irritable. One thing I found was just going outside and going for a walk or going for a bike ride or moving my body. When I came back, those feelings were gone, right? So if we think of emotions, what emotions are is energy and motion. So what is that energy that's pulsing through us, right? These emotions of anxiety or irritability, just your body kind of wanting to move and that's not able to, right? So that's a very important thing for people to understand, right? If you're feeling anxious or irritable and you've been sitting inside all day, like go for a 10-minute walk, go for a 15-minute walk, and then come back and see how you feel, right? Is it the same? It's probably changed a little bit, right?
It probably
you
has.
can understand that importance of organic movement, like we said, in terms of the blue zones, but gardening, if you can do these things as you age and really never stop doing them, it's not going to be as foreign to you as when one day it is, right? So say getting up and down from the ground, right? I think a great thing for people is if you have coffee or tea in the morning, like find a spot in front of your couch, get down on the ground, right? Have that coffee or drink there, get back up, like feel what it feels like to move around on the ground, because I think that's extremely important, because as we get older, that gets more and more difficult to do, especially if we haven't done it in who knows how long, right? So that organic movement is so huge in terms of just health, wellness, longevity, but it's such an important tool for everyone, no matter the stage of life that you're in.
Right.
Obviously, with a successful health coaching business, you've helped people tackle this idea of goals. What are some things that help you stay consistent and focus in that practice? And what are some things that allow you to help your clients stay focused in that regards and not make them so drastic, like we touched on at the beginning, right? But implementing those actionable changes. So long question short, how do you help people navigate that difficult area of goal setting and lifestyle change?
Yeah. Well, that is definitely a huge part of, I think, why most people would seek out a health coach is, they have something in mind they've tried to do, or their doctor is telling them something that they need to do, and they really don't know how to make that happen. So I do think it's super important to tie whatever we're trying to do into values and life values and life goals. And I think if people have some sort of, big, hairy, audacious goal out in life, then it really does help them make the smaller, maybe the SMART goals, the very concrete, tiniest steps, make them more doable because they're tied to something that's really important to the person. I don't look at health and well-being as the end goal. That is the way that you will achieve whatever end goals you have in your life. So I think it's super important to always be connecting, what we're doing in terms of small steps back to bigger values, bigger goals in life. I was a psychology major and I have embraced positive psychology as well. And one of my favorite researchers is Gabrielle Oettingen. And she has a methodology called WHOOP, which stands for wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. Maybe it's the, executive in me, but I love if then questions, so essentially, you've decided that this is something you want, you can envision the outcome. There might come to be an obstacle. And I think that's where most of us don't pay enough attention. So we have decided that we're going to do this thing. Maybe it even is adding in. Maybe it's adding in vegetables at lunch 5 times a week, but what obstacles might present themselves? I think oftentimes people don't want to question, like, what would happen if this whole idea, this wish, if your early plan has fallen apart. People don't want to put that idea that it could into their brains, but I think it's super important too, because life is hugely busy, and we're not Little House on the Prairie with like Mondays
No.
you wash the clothes and Tuesdays you iron them. We have 100,000 things that we're juggling. Sometimes the new health behaviors that we're trying to embrace, they're not at the forefront. And I think that we need to plan for that. So I love her approach in terms of identifying potential obstacles and then coming up with a plan for those. So I have found that to be one of the best tools out there in terms of making changes, because then once you have a plan for these different possible eventualities, it's just much more likely to end in achieving the goal. And I try to do the same thing. Sometimes some of my changes have become automatic and I can kind of work on the next thing, but sometimes those automatic things fail, for lack of a better word. They become more of a challenge again. Then I just come back to that same outlook, which is like, okay, well, what kind of obstacles got in the way and how can I address those? Because, this goal is important to me. So that's one of my favorite nuggets and shifts in perspective, I think, for many people, because sometimes there's this really very strong embrace of the perfection and little understanding that life is super busy and challenging. And there might come a point where that thing is not going to happen unless you have planned out for plan B.
Yeah, plan B. No, that's really important. I've never heard of that analogy being addressed before. And I think that's really crucial. I actually wrote a note for myself, but planning those, what are the potential obstacles that are going to come up and seeing them beforehand. I think that's really great, right? Because we know obstacles are going to come up. We know we're going to have to overcome them in some capacity. But if you can identify a few before you get started, now you're going to be prepared. Like, okay, I can see that thing coming down the road. I'm better able to react to it, right? That's really important. And that will really help people navigate through those, as opposed to just getting to that obstacle, getting to that barrier and being like, oh, well, this is the end of the road. I guess I'll go back and do what I was doing before, because that's very common. Like, I do a lot of stuff right now that I've implemented over the last few months. And there's days like I just don't want to do it, but I kind of force myself to it, overcome the obstacle, overcome the hurdle. It's done. I check the box off, and it's an instant feeling of accomplishment, gratitude, achievement, right? So it's not about resisting against these and avoiding them all. It's like, what are the small ones that you can overcome each day, right? That's going to help continue along that path. And I think if you can identify them before they come up, all the better, right? Especially the ones that are going to pop up in your mind. Like I've talked about a few times, it's like, I'm a big excuse guy. If you were to say, hey, you should do this, my initial reaction is going to be rapid fire, 3, 4, 5 excuses of why I shouldn't do it.
And that's, those genes are why we survive. So, exactly. You got to embrace that. You got to embrace that tendency, because.
But if you just let it dissolve a little bit and then come back to it, but okay, yeah, I can do that. What are the obstacles? This, that, the other thing. Okay. How can I get around those? What can I do to overcome them? I think that's really valuable. So thanks for sharing that with everyone out there today.
Yeah, it's actually science-based, so that has been proven to be effective in behavior change.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Carolyn, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you have a busy schedule, but one question that we've asked everyone on all these episodes thus far is that if you had one message you can tell the entire world right now, everyone's listening, what would that message be?
Thank you for that. I think it's really important to have that dream of something that could be different. As we've been talking about, I think that there's no one right way to any of this. We're the compilation of our own genes, our own experiences, our preferences, what's going on in our lives at this moment. I would say we're collectively not as healthy as we could be. I think COVID has shown us that. In case the incredible burden of chronic disease wasn't, catching our attention. But I do think that even though that's true, there's so much we can do to change it. And none of this is our fault. I mean, a lot of these things are the way society operates, and it hasn't worked in our favor, and it is working contrary to, how our bodies were designed. But even though it's not our fault, we are really the ones that are going to have to do something about it. Nobody's going to swoop in, unfortunately, and care for us, though I wish that could happen.
Me
So
too.
again, I do like to rely on the wisdom of other cultures and people in different life stages, like we talked about. I read that one of the top regrets of older people when they're nearing the end of their lives is that they didn't pay enough attention to their health. And, they were all raised in a time where they had a much better chance of being healthy just because they weren't dealing with so much of the situation that we're dealing with that makes it hard to maintain our health today. I just want people to honor those people who are here to tell us that they wish they had done this and that we could do this a little bit earlier in our own lives. Again, not for the outcome of being so healthy, like we're going to write that on our tombstone, she ate clean. That's not the point. It's that we can live without regret and that we can have these beautiful and productive lives that are meaningful and purposeful. And I guess just that we can approach all these things with the idea that it doesn't have to be onerous. It can actually be fun and uplifting and energizing while we're going through it.
That's really beautiful. And I like what you said there. It's so many people, you get to that point of as you get into older life and older years, that if your health isn't a priority now, at some point in your life, it's going to be, right? So whatever ways that we can start to make that a little bit more of a priority in our lives, then that's only going to help us out for longer down the road, right? So it's I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day who just started a training program, and he's like, I wish I did this 20 years ago when I was younger. I'm like, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're doing it now. It's like, yes, the best time to start anything was yesterday, but the next best time is today, right? So
Absolutely.
What can you do today that's going to help you live without regret for tomorrow, next year, 10 years down the road? I think that's such a beautiful metaphor for everyone to take into heart.
Yeah, it's great. And it's very positive, I think, because we have so much power within us.
Absolutely. More power than a lot of us realize, right? Yes. And you think that if we go back to looking at those beliefs, looking at those thoughts, what ones are serving us, what ones aren't, what can you change, right? There's so many different things there, but you have to kind of do the work yourself and focus on transforming those thoughts, transforming those beliefs, and you will be able to transform your life in whatever way you set out to. But you have to kind of stay focused on that path and not turn around and go back to where you were when those obstacles come up. So I think what you said previous is identifying them beforehand and just seeing how you can prepare for them, because they're going to show up. We're always going to have adversities and traumas and things that are going to set us back. But the more durable we become, the more adept we're going to be in terms of handling those when they do arise. So I think that's really beautiful.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much.
Carolyn, thank you so much for this conversation. It was great to finally connect with you on a deeper level, but I know there's so much in this conversation that's going to help our listeners out there, people around the world. And that's why we have these conversations, that if there's one thing from this episode that clicks for somebody and they can make a change in their life, then what a powerful gift to the world. And much like you are doing with your podcast that's reaching so many thousands of people, I think that's really admirable. And so thanks for your gift to the world. And thanks again, Carolyn. We really appreciate this. This was a great conversation, and let's look to do this again in the future.
That would be fabulous. Thanks so much. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I hope that this first introduction to Whoop was helpful to you, and I'll spell it out in more detail, literally and figuratively, and how it can help clients or kids, if they're open to it, or us, pivot to a new adjusted plan when plan A doesn't happen. I wanted to also express my gratitude for Jason today. Please check out his site, Your Epic, to find not just awesome organic whey protein, but also workout information, programs, and supplies. Plus, you can listen to his podcast there or anywhere else you find podcasts. And just a shout out about whey protein. It has one of the most complete sets of amino acids of any protein, which is why I think it's so popular. I mean, it's so versatile also. But it's even cropping up in some of the nutritional plans that I've seen published if one has COVID, because, and I'm not saying in lieu of anything else, I'm just saying from, a nutritional point of view that it's highly recommended because it packs that nutritional punch of having all those amino acids. And it also might be a little easier to get down the hatch if we're not feeling great. So another reason to check out the show notes for all the links to Jason's great work. And with that, my friends, I'm going to head to the garden right now to pick everything I can. We're about to get hit with a hurricane, and I'm not sure what we'll expect over the next few days, so I'm going to go harvest things rather than have them get scattered all about. By the time you hear this, you might know how we fared, and I will try my best, assuming we have internet and electricity. I'll try my best to keep everyone posted on social media. The links to all those things are in the show notes, by the way, as well. And with that, please make sure that your own health needs are on your priority list. This is very important, critical, really. And I'll be checking in with you next time to see how it went. The information provided by Wellness While Walking, Whole Life Workshop, and Bermuda Road Wellness, LLC, is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking any new healthcare regimen, including walking.